What's up, everybody, and welcome to PPR Podcast number 134, sponsored by the San Diego Strike Force. As always, I'm Chase Izidoro, and today on the podcast, we have Mr. Mike Millburn himself. Mike, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chase. I'm glad you could scrape the bottom of the barrel and get me here to talk some playoffs.
It's called a rotation.
Rotation.
Fifth man starters always still got to make a start.
Still got my spot.
All right, well, we usually do a little review from last week, but I feel like, man, it's playoff week. Let's just get right into the playoff matchups.
Just bracketology. Let's go.
We got all the brackets released now. We have to start off with the open division. The 1 seed going to the Lincoln Hornets. They will be taking on the Helix Highlanders, and Carlsbad getting the 2 seed, taking on Granite Hills. Obviously, they all have a bye this week. But next week, what do you see now from these 4 teams? We've seen them all be great, and I think they've separated themselves from everyone across San Diego this whole year. But now that we have the matchups, now we know who will be playing each other, what catches your eye?
Again, the first thing you brought it up is these were the 4 best teams all year. We kind of knew this. We saw this from week 1, that these 4 teams kind of separated themselves as the season went on. And then with Granite beating Helix, that's a statement win. That's what sealed them in to get that 3 seed, to go to Carlsbad. But you look at the matchups on paper, the one that sticks out to me is that Lincoln Helix game, because you are going to have superstars on both sides of the ball for both teams. It's going to be a really, really good Helix offense. Rylan Jesse, Kevin Allen, Braden Arrington, just weapons on weapons. But going up against that Lincoln defense, Jerome Roberts, Micah Valenzuela, just speed and just guys everywhere. And that's, I mean, I'd want to go watch that game. Like, I'd want to pay KUSI to go watch that game. But then on the other side with Carlsbad and Granite, I saw Carlsbad last week against El Camino. The one thing El Camino did a really good job of against Carlsbad, at least in the first half, was sealing off the edge for Julian. They made life difficult. Granite Hills has a very good defensive line. Can they do the same thing and maybe upset Carlsbad? We'll see. I don't know. Either way, though, man, you can't go wrong with either one of these games. It's really going to be may the best team win, because these are the best teams.
And I'll dive a little bit more into this next week when it is game week for them. But just to talk about it a little bit, you know, it's so interesting because I look at Lincoln as probably the heavy favorites, you know, not over Helix, but I think they are heavy favorites to win it all. But when you look at a team like Helix, it's not as if they can't play with the top teams. They're not one of those. They took Granite to overtime, and they were down in that game, came all the way back against a great Granite defense, which is something we know this Helix offense is capable of. We've seen them also, you know, go toe-to-toe with Cathedral and then pull away. So they are very capable of beating Lincoln. I think Helix's defense will have to step up in that one, because the Lincoln offense is extremely fast and extremely dangerous, especially on the outside. But I do like the Helix offense against the Lincoln defense. You know, we've seen this Lincoln defense dominate all year long. It will be, you know, a stellar performance if they can keep that up against an offense for Helix, which seems to just keep rolling. Even when they're down in games, they still come back, and Kevin Allen is one of the toughest guys. He'll probably be the toughest running back that Lincoln will face all year long, in my opinion. But when I look at the Granite and Carlsbad game, that's just a battle of both defenses, which is crazy when there's a 5-star quarterback on one side. But that Carlsbad D-line has been absolutely lights out all year. But then you look at the Granite Hills defense, just flying around to the ball, making big plays all the time. It will be I think that one's going to be extremely close. I think it might even be an overtime type of affair. I mean, that one's going to be great. And it's going to be at Carlsbad, which is great. You know, Granite's a great place to play, don't get me wrong. But that crowd at Carlsbad, with the Granite crowd now on the opposite side, oh, man, that's going to be the spectacle.
I mean, they call themselves the loud crowd for a reason at Carlsbad. It's because they're really, really loud.
All right, now let's get into Division 1. Torrey Pines getting the 1 seed, Mission Hills with the 2 seed, El Camino with the 3 seed, and La Costa Canyon with the 4 seed, and all the avocado teams getting the bye. So we have the 5 seed St. Augustine hosting the 12 seed Mira Mesa, the 6 seed Cathedral Catholic versus number 11 Ramona, the 7 seed San Marcos versus number 10 Poway, and the 8 seed Mater Dei Catholic versus the 9 seed Madison. For me, the one that stands out the most is the 8-9 matchup between Mater Dei and Madison. Both teams where I think the expectations were a lot higher. You know, obviously they're D1, everyone makes the playoffs, but we thought Madison would be able to compete possibly for another open division title or open division spot like they did last year. And the same thing for Mater Dei. You know, this is a state championship winning team back-to-back years. They lost a lot of players. But now you're looking at a situation where you have so many on record where you weren't competitive against the best. Same thing goes for Madison. Both these teams have that. The one thing that's separating Mater Dei is that they did get a huge win against a St. Augustine team that's soaring right now, and even a Point Loma team that's been pretty good as well. Madison doesn't necessarily have that on their record, but we know they're capable of so much more. They got a great win against Mira Mesa. For me, these are two teams that, it's almost like a reset button. Sure, Mater Dei was able to win their league. Sure, they were able to, go on a huge win streak, but that's kind of almost expected of them in the South Bay. But now it's like a reset. It's like, okay, we get to match up against each other, and we get to now prove who we really are in this season. I love that matchup because of that. And it almost, could spark a fire for both these teams to possibly go on a run and win D1 because they're both very much capable of doing that.
And the winner of that game, I think, would get Torrey Pines in the next round. And, and kind of like you said, you never know. You catch lightning in a bottle and, maybe get Torrey on a bad week coming off a bye. Because the thing with Madison is they have the players. They have the numbers. James Tavau's a great player. That D-line, the front seven on defense is really good. But you did kind of say, kind of a little bit of underachieve, just a little.
Absolutely.
But man, if there's any time for you to kind of reinvent yourself and kind of, find new life, it'd be when you're playing, what could be your last game of the season. And that's going to be, I think that's going to be a fun one. The one I've got my eye on is that 7-10 game, Poway at San Marcos. Now, Poway had, they played in the, the record may not look as impressive as it is, but they played in the toughest league in the county, as referenced by all four of the top teams in this division. All in the Avocado League, all getting a bye week, and the top team in the Avocado League is the 2 seed in the Open. So that really just tells you how deep and how good the Avocado League was this year. But if you look a little closer at that Poway record, 3-1 before the losing streak they're on right now, but they have a win against RB the first week of the season. They played Del Norte to 8 points. Those are the top 2 seeds in D2. Now, could Poway have been in D2 and made a run? Sure, but they're in D1. That's the hand they're dealt. So they can make this one a little bit interesting, but the thing that makes it a little bit more interesting for San Marcos is the fact that they got their guy back, and that's Crete Makahaley. Because we saw what he did before he got hurt. We saw what the team looked like when he was injured. And then again, you see what the team looked like when he came back. They didn't really lose and that's the thing, they didn't really lose a step when Crete was out. The record is still very good. But man, getting him back obviously gave that offense a spark. The rapport he has with Jace Nix. Jace is one of the best in the county. So I am really excited to see which way this game goes, because the winner of this one would get Mission Hills. So San Marcos could potentially be looking at a Discovery Bowl rematch against San Marcos, or Mission Hills against San Marcos, and San Marcos lost that game. So if they can maybe get another shot at Mission Hills, they're going to have a little bit of revenge. But obviously, you can never look past the team that's ahead of you. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens between San Marcos and Poway.
You know what? When I watched that San Marcos team, I was high on them to begin the year because they have Crete Makahaley. Obviously, the injury, it kind of left them kind of out of sight because we weren't really as focused on them because they picked up a loss, and the offense didn't necessarily look the same. They were running the Wildcat, just trying to figure it out. There's a couple times they just handed the ball to Jason Nix and said, "Go get yards." But now that he's back, it's a completely different dynamic with him at the quarterback position.
100%.
And from what I've seen, I think even being a sophomore, he might be arguably the best remaining quarterback in this Division I bracket. I mean, I know you have the seniors at Cathedral Catholic with Jack Stevens, he's been great as well. Tyson Line has been phenomenal at Mira Mesa as well. But man, when I watch Crete, he really stands out. Honestly, probably as close to Julian Sane does when I was watching him in the offseason. They both look really, really good. He's got an incredible arm. I know you'll love this. He's got a little Brett Favre in him. I'm not going to lie. He's not afraid to let it sling.
Oh, he'll let it rip.
He will throw in double coverage, but he'll get it there. Now, being young quarterback like they all are, and they're young men as well, they're bound to make mistakes. They're bound to throw interceptions. I think he has that in his game, which could be a problem in this playoffs. But it's those plays where he just stretches the field. He goes deep to Jason Nix. He goes deep to a lot of these guys who make big plays for them and don't get the respect that they deserve. I think San Marcos could potentially be a dark horse for D1 in itself. It'd be kind of crazy for the 7 seed in D1 to go on and win it, but I think they very much are capable of that, and I wouldn't be shocked by it at all.
Yeah, same. You can almost make an argument that San Marcos might be a hair underseeded.
Yeah, I agree.
In this bracket. But again, it just speaks to the strength of how good the Avocado was, that all those teams are still slotted up ahead of them. But you mentioned sophomore quarterbacks in this division. Be a little remiss, don't mention the guy who slings it for number 4, Quinn Roth.
100%. And Quinn's probably looked the best out of all of them, in my opinion, this year. He's looked so good. And that's the one thing about La Costa Canyon, too. We'll get more into it next week. But it's been so weird that, like, they've been this close. Like, there's an alternate universe out there where they got one loss because it's been that close in every single game. They could have been in the open if a couple of those ones went differently. They've been great. Obviously, this D1 playoffs it's stacked. I think this might be, every year there's probably like 1 or 2 where it's like, all right, it's more of a D2 a team instead of a D1. They just happen to be in there. And if we had to say that about a team, it's probably Poway, to no fault of their own because they lost so many guys.
Yeah.
But really, top to bottom, I really do feel comfortable saying that D1 this year is stacked. Like, it's got the best talent, in my opinion. Maybe La Jolla can make an argument for that in D2, and we'll get into that. But I think D1 is just so good across the board, and these opening round matchups are going to be great as well.
And I think it's kind of one of those things we realized when we figured out who the top 4 teams were going to be as we got into the halfway point of the season when those top 4 separated themselves. We could look up and down in Division 1, and you could just realize this is going to be winner take all. Like, if you're going to win D1, you're going to earn it.
Oh, 100%.
You're going to earn it.
And I'm glad that, no disrespect to the D1 teams right now, but I'm glad that none of them snuck in over Helix or, because of their loss to Granite. I'm glad that this is the 4 that are in the open because I do think that they are just a little bit better than the rest of those teams in D1. So it might have been a situation where they were kind of heavy favorites. Now it's more of it is really a toss-up between all these teams. I mean, Torrey Pines on running the ball and defense alone is the 1 seed, should say it all. They've got a great defense. They've earned that spot. But, man, it really is going to be great.
I mean, you mentioned that Torrey defense, the one guy who's kind of elevated himself, and, I'm sure Paul Rudy will love the plug, and it's Cade Wilkin.
Yeah.
He really jumps out on tape with a defense that's got a lot of really good players. It's hard for one guy to jump out, but man, he jumps out.
Yeah, 100%. Now we get into Division 2. We got Del Norte getting the 1 seed, Rancho Bernardo with the 2 seed. So the 2 head coaches that took over for their programs, the 2 NFL coaches, are both on a bye now. La Jolla with the 3 seed and Scripps Ranch with the 4 seed. They're all on bye to open this week. We got 5-seeded Point Loma at San Pasqual, the 12 seed. 6-seeded Central Union versus 11-seeded East Lake. 7-seeded Bishops versus 10-seeded Brawley, and 8-seeded Oceanside versus 9-seeded Steel Canyon. Mike, which one kind of stands out to you in D2?
It's going to be that last one you mentioned. It's going to be that 9-8 game, Steel at Oceanside. It's crazy to think that Oceanside last year went 0-10.
Yeah.
0-10. This is a historic flagship San Diego high school football program that went winless. So you knew whoever came in to right the ship, as the in the case of the Pirates, was going to have their work cut out for them. But man, what Coach Pomelli has done this year with that team to take them to 6-4 and to get them into the playoffs, I mean, that's remarkable. Honestly, it's remarkable. But then you look on the other side of Steel Canyon. The phrase that comes to mind for me for Steel Canyon is battle tested. They play really, really good teams in their league. Now, do they necessarily win all the games? No, but they play you tough. You're gonna earn your lunch when you play Steel Canyon. And there's some fun little aspects here with this game, especially with Oceanside. I know the guy you've mentioned, receiver Trey Nastasio, averages 28 yards a catch, 537 yards. Guy's a playmaker.
Yeah.
And what do you do with a playmaker? You get the ball in his hands. And on the ground, Georgie Nua, 529 yards on the ground. So they're very balanced on offense. But then on the other side with Steel Canyon, Jonathan Sablon, man, 1,300 yards? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
145 yards a game. That is a workhorse running back. So you know Steele's going to ride him the entire game. This on paper, looks to me like this is going to be maybe like a one-score game. Whoever scores last can end up taking that one to go and face Del Norte the next week. But yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see who comes out on top on that one.
Steele is going to be very tough to stop the run because Sablon has shown time and time again. He arguably could be the most reliable running back in the county. You know, you could probably look at Kevin Allen in there, guys like Turner and Pablo Jackson as well. But man, Sablon just takes the rock every single time, and he produces in a big way for Steele Canyon. And they have great players around him as well. For Oceanside, I think to stay in this game, because I think it will be tough for them to stop Sablon. For them to stay in this game, they need to get the ball in Trey Anastasio's hands.
100%.
I know, you know, they don't necessarily throw it that much because Georgie New is a pretty good running back himself, but Anastasio is going to get them a win in the playoffs if they do it right, and I think they can. If they can feed that kid and he can get open, man, they really have a chance to beat the Steele Canyon team. However, I do think Steele has, you know, they've got a great line too.
They always do.
And with that running back, it's going to be very, very tough for them. And they got big playmakers on defense as well. So for me, you know, I probably would say Steele might be the favorites in this one, even though they are the 9 and they're on the road. But if Oceanside's going to be in it, it's got to go through Anastasio. For me, the one I'm looking at, though, is Point Loma at San Pasqual. This is San Pasqual team that almost didn't make the playoffs. And University City almost did as a 1-9 record just because of strength of schedule. So I am very happy that the Golden Eagles got in there. I think they were very deserving of that. Their only real slip up in the Valley League was the close one at the end to Oceanside, where Oceanside won it on the last play of the game. You know, but San Pasqual's been really, really great. Robert Renteria and Marcus Rocha, the sophomores, have been phenomenal for them. But for me, this Point Loma team is really underrated, and it comes down to Brady Allen. Man, takes over for Max Newbegin after 5 games. Then Brady throws for 781 yards and 13 touchdowns, only 1 pick. He rushes for 781 yards and 8 touchdowns all season. He caught 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he has 4 interceptions on defense. He is the entire team for Point Loma.
Basically, yeah.
I know they have, you know, they also have Terzoli as well, who's got 6.5 sacks this year. He's been a wrecker as well. I think Point Loma will be a very tough test for San Pasqual. But I wouldn't sleep on San Pasqual because this is a team that I think they were thinking they weren't going to get this chance. They weren't going to get the chance of playing in the playoffs. And now, not only that, they're hosting the game. So it'll be a very, very interesting matchup. But I don't sleep on the Pointers. They were right there with La Jolla, who's shown to be, I would say, the class of Division II. I know Del Norte is great as well. But La Jolla has been, I think, playing out of their minds all season. And they hung with them until the fourth quarter where La Jolla just, you know, blew away. So Point Loma is a really good team this year.
Yeah, and to your point, it's hard to hang with La Jolla, especially offensively, because you look top to bottom at that receiving court, it's so deep. And they're all underclassmen. They're all coming back. And as good as, and I know we're talking about the teams on the bye, but as good as Jackson Deal is, Carson Deal is going to be a dude.
Yeah.
He's already a dude. There's so much potential there. He could very well be one of the, I don't want to go on the record saying, but I'm going to anyway. He could be, I think, one of the best players maybe to ever roll through La Jolla.
Wow.
Just there, because I saw their game a couple weeks ago against Patrick Henry. He did a little bit. He caught 2 touchdowns. He had a pick, which he almost took back to the house. He had a second pick that he dropped, but there's so much there that you just see like the kid just knows how to play football.
Yeah.
He's just a football player. But Point Loma though, I kind of agree with you. Always kind of little under the radar, little underrated. You thought when Max Newbegin goes down, like, oh, you know, there's going to be a drop-off, but you plug in Brady Allen and they don't lose a step. The offense just hums right along. And Nate Terzoli, again, just a wrecking machine on defense. But the thing I always like about San Pasqual is they're always very disciplined.
Yeah.
They're always they run out in the big yellow hoods. Oh, it's tradition. They're always very, and I've always respected the tradition and the discipline that comes with that team, because to run that offense, you need to be precise. And yeah, this could be, I know 5-12s are always the fun games in March Madness brackets where you always see an upset. Could this be one? I don't know, but either way, I think it's going to be a pretty entertaining ballgame.
Well, now we move on to Division III. The 1 seed Mission Bay, the 2 seed Fallbrook, the 3 seed West Hills, and the 4 seed Grossmont sets up the 5 seed Santa Fe Christian at 12 seed San Diego, who's been on fire lately. 6 seed La Jolla Country Day versus 11 seed Morse. 7 seed Imperial versus the 10 seed Valley Center, and the 8 seed Patrick Henry versus 9 seed El Cap. For me, when I'm looking at Division III, there's a lot of good matchups in here, but the one I'm looking at is Valley Center returning to the scene of the crime, which seems to be their only loss since head coach Bill Dunkel took over, was at Imperial in overtime, where it was decided by a Robles field goal, and Robles has been great for them all season long. But for me, this Valley Center team has been on fire. Ever since the coaching change happened, they changed their whole season around, and they're getting back to the program that we'd always knew them to be. And a huge win over Oceanside, which was kind of a cool little, early 2000s, heavyweights going at it for the Valley League. So it was a great win for them. But now you're getting the chance to go right the wrong, which was the overtime loss in Imperial. Now, it's not going to be easy. Anytime you go out to the desert, it's always going to be tough. But I think Valley Center has a chance to win this one and be one of the hottest teams in San Diego and continue that if they can get over the Imperial team. This Imperial team, though, their defense forced a bunch of negative plays in that last game. Can Valley Center sustain their run and not get caught in the backfield? That will be the difference maker in this one. But what game are you seeing in D3?
I'm going to go a little bit different side of the bracket. I'm going to go with that 6-11 game, Morse at La Jolla Country Day, because you know what you're going to get with Morse. They run the ball a lot. I mean, they have 3 guys with over 440 yards: Superior Guerra, Jonah Holloway, and Khalif Bloom. I mean, a true 3-headed monster at running back. And we always got to give a little bit of love to our girl Lexi and her guy LT. So we all love LT. But the thing that I've seen with Morse this year is they kind of have a little bit of flair for the dramatic.
Yeah.
They like to save a big play for the very end of the game, or a big play when it matters most. But if you can keep the ground game at least in reasonable check. I mean, you're never going to keep it in check entirely. These running backs are going to make their plays because that's what they do. But if you can limit the damage in the running game against Morse, you have a pretty good chance to win. Now, on the other side for Country Day, I mean, you talk about a guy who does a little bit of everything. That's Jaden Mangini. 1,800 yards, 27 touchdowns, only 3 picks. Just a true, just a football player. I mean, he's not a quarterback. I mean, if you watch his film, he's not a quarterback. He's a football player. And he even said as much when he was, I think, sitting in this very seat when he was on the PPR. He told Paul, "I was like, I'm just a football player," and that's what, and I know that's what Coach Hales likes out there, is he likes having football players. So obviously most of the offense is going to run through him. As he goes, so goes the team. I'm not sure if Morse can pull off the upset here, especially with the game being at Country Day, and because it may be a small school, but they pack those stands and those fans are into that game. But I kind of like Country Day in this one. I don't want to say it's not going to be a blow. I think it'll be a close game between Country Day and Morse.
Yeah, I think Country Day has shown capable of being on both sides of the ball. One player we do need to give a shout out to is Superior Guerra. He seems to be making a play on the PPR every single Friday night, and he just always seems to be in the action. Doesn't necessarily always get his name read, but man, that kid is a really good player for Morse. I know he came out the box hot with, I think, pick 6, and I think he took one to that. Or no, he had the spin move that was up for the play of the week.
Oh, yes.
He's a great football player for Morse. Same with LT Turner. I mean, he really has shown that he can play football, after not playing. And just the body size for him is every player on defense. You want a guy like that, and you see it on the tape. I think it might be not enough though when you go against La Jolla Country Day, who is just a proven machine with Mangini in there at quarterback. I think it'd be a little bit difficult. But now we go on to Division 4. Mount Miguel with the 1 seed, Chula with the 2 seed, Westview with the 3 seed, Santana with the 4 seed sets up 5 Crawford at 12 Orange Glen, 6 Bonita Vista versus number 11 Coronado, 7 Olympian versus 10 Escondido Charter, and 8 Calexico versus Escondido at the 9 seed. For me, when I'm looking at this one, I really like this Bonita versus Coronado matchup.
Okay.
Bonita has flown under the radar so much, maybe because it's not one of the schools that pops out and is a memorable name, but Keita Caden Ada Tannehill is a really, really good running back. And he's small, but he's built like a rock, man. He's a really, really good running back for Bonita Vista this season. I believe he has over 1,100 yards, 13 total touchdowns. And then Diego Bustamante, 10.5 sacks on the season. It's a 1-2 punch on the offensive side, being able to run the ball, and then on the defensive side, being able to dominate in the trenches. You do that, you'll be very tough to beat in the playoffs. But Coronado, we have to say something about Graham Bauer. This kid played a little bit quarterback last year, is not the quarterback this year, but he does everything for them. 859 total yards, 7 touchdowns, 85 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 picks. I mean, Graham Bauer is phenomenal for the Islanders, and I think that gets overlooked constantly because it is a bit of a smaller school, but that kid's having an incredible season. For me, I think I'm looking at Bonita Vista. The way they play and the style they play will be tough to stop, but I think if there's someone that can, it can be Graham Bauer getting into that backfield.
And I'm glad we get to give some love to Graham Bauer, because even though he's not the quarterback right now, the offense still flows entirely through him.
Yeah, I think so.
He is such an important part of what they do offensively, whether he lines up in the slot, whether he lines up in the backfield, whether he lines up wide. Getting the ball in his hands on offense is paramount. I mean, they don't win if he doesn't touch the ball. And defensively, he never comes off the field. Like he's not afraid. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy, but man, he plays with so much confidence and with so much heart that he's impossible to not root for. That is going to be fun. I don't watch a lot of Bonita Vista, but that's an intriguing game. But the one that I've got my eye on is that 5-12 Orange Glen against Crawford. I saw Crawford against Coronado earlier this year, and I did not know a lot about Crawford's running back, Joseph Minchello. That is a man who runs angry. I mean, there's that segment on NFL Network, Angry Runs. That guy is the epitome of angry runs. It's just every time he gets the ball, he is looking to run people over. But he's deceptively fast. For a guy his size, he has speed. And if you can get him the ball 20, 25 times a game and wear down a defense, you got to like their chances. But on the other side, Orange Glen, not only did they just win their league title, they won league for the first time in 28 years. 28 years. I mean, Sean Salisbury might have still been the quarterback the last time they won league. But it's a team that did not get a lot of love this season, which is a shame. But really, really good running back in Bowen Cannon. 1,100 yards, 14 total touchdowns. Last game, 370 yards. So really, really good player. Crawford, though, man, they're always tough. Coach Marquez, he always gets his guys ready. They moved up a division. They lost a lot of kids. They don't have a lot of numbers, but, man, they always play hard. And if Orange Glen is going to take this one against Crawford and pull off the upset, Bowen Cannon's going to need to be the beginning, middle, and end of that offensive game plan. Otherwise, it could be a long day for the Patriots.
I agree. And, we have to shout out for Crawford for losing the guys they did. They had a star player being injured for the majority of the season, basically only suiting up less than 25 guys every single game. That's very tough to pull off, and then to go on the run that they did. They have been hot going into this against a very good Hoover team, which we'll get into right now. But, man, shout out to Crawford. Another great season for them and, proving that they can pull off yet more wins and great success without really all the backing and all the the players that you can get in from transfers and in fact losing those guys. So big shout out to them. But now we get into Division 5. No buys. Everyone's playing. Number 1 seed Vincent Memorial versus number 8 Valhalla. Number 2 Sweetwater versus number 7 Southwest from El Centro. Number 3 El Cajon Valley versus number 6 Kearney. And number 4 Hoover versus number 5 Monte Vista. Which game's standing out to you?
It's going to be, for me, that 3-6 game, Kearney against El Cajon. I don't know how many people know about the quarterback at Kearney, Brody Stump, but if you haven't watched him, Watch him.
He puts up numbers.
He's very, very talented. 3,000 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, 400 yards on the ground, additional 6 touchdowns. So obviously, very, very talented. Can do a little bit of everything. And again, maybe just he doesn't get a lot of love because of where he plays. But on the other side, you look at El Cajon Valley. What a job they've done this year under Coach Osborne. It's always kind of been, they've always been right there. You can see it with the players. Again, doesn't always have the biggest numbers, doesn't have the biggest kids, but you can always, anytime you watch them in person, you always see it, just they're right there. It's like you think, okay, maybe this will be the year. Maybe this will be the game. And by getting a 3 seed in these playoffs, they've kind of shown that they might be there, that they've arrived. Kearney's going to be a really, really tough test. But man, I wouldn't put anything past El Cajon Valley this year. Props to Coach Osborne for sticking with his plan. Props to the kids for sticking with him, because the results are starting to show.
I think I agree that might be the best matchup. But the one I'm looking at is Hoover versus Monte Vista. And I just need to give love for Hoover, man. This team, I'm bought in on this offense.
Oh, yeah.
Xavier Williams has been dominant on both sides of the ball. But Christian Noriega and Sir Autry, all 3 of them together, what they've been able to accomplish for this Hoover team has been nothing short of amazing. So I want to see them go on a run. And that's, no disrespect to Monte Vista, but what's cool about D5, it's almost like Big 12 football. There is no defense. No disrespect to any of those defensive players. But like every single time we get these D5 matchups, it's like, all right, final score 46-43. And so that's going to make it really fun and interesting during the playoffs, is these high-scoring games where they're back and forth. I think that always comes with Hoover. Hoover's given up a lot of points, but they're always right there putting up just as many. We saw that in the Battle for the Boulevard last week.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really interested to see what this Hoover team can do, because I think there's a chance that they could go on and win D5. I think Kearney can do that as well. They're very capable of doing the same, where they put up a lot of points. But now we get on to Division 5 AA. Number 1, Holtville, and number 2, Army-Navy have byes. But number 3, Tri-City versus number 6, Calipatria. Number 4, Rock Academy versus number 5, Maranatha. For me, I'm looking at the Tri-City Calipatria game. Eagles of Tri-City are 8-2 this season. They're coming up just short in the Pacific League with that loss to Orange Glen. They have put on very good performances all year long, and I think Army-Navy will probably be the favorite in D5 AA. With the team that they have, the defense probably being just a little bit too much, even for this level. But don't sleep on the Eagles, man. They're really, really good. It runs through junior quarterback Joel Valverde. He's a 2-sport athlete for basketball and football. Put up 1,300 passing yards. I think he leads them on to victory over Calipatria, and then they get a chance to go on to the next round and prove what they're worth in the semifinals.
So I'm going to take the other side of that bracket, the 4-5 game, the Rock against Maranatha. If folks out there don't know the name Donald Moore III, gotta give him the third. Let me just tell you this. He doesn't just lead his team. He doesn't just lead the city. He doesn't just lead the state. He leads the nation in kickoff return yardage. The nation. He averages almost 44 yards per return. That's insane. That's crazy. But then you tack on the fact he also has over 1,000 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns. He's got 23 total touchdowns on the year. One of the best players that probably nobody knows about because he plays for the Rock.
Yeah.
But you lead the nation in anything. It doesn't matter how big or how small your school is. You lead the nation in one individual statistic. You're a pretty good football player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you take on the other side, they're going up against a team in Maranatha Christian that they've already beat this year. They beat them 40-0 a couple of weeks ago, so there's some familiarity there. I just think the Rock's going to have a little bit too much juice for Maranatha to try and beat him again. I know it's tough to beat the same team twice in one season, but I think the Rock's just got a slight little edge to move on to the next round.
It's always so stunning to see the guys that kind of get overlooked because we'll say it first, we don't always film all of those games. We have there's only so many we can send crews out to go film. But then you start to see these guys, and you're like, we need someone to go out there to film it. So it's really cool that that Donald Moore III has been able to do that this year. And hats off to him, man. To go down and say, yeah, that's like something you bring up at like the cookout, like 20 years down the line. It's like, I used to be the best punt returner of all time. You know what I mean? And nobody believes you.
And they try to say, oh no.
At least we got Max Preps now to back up the stats.
They're like, oh
right?
no, you're lying. Like, no, I have the stats right here. Literally, I literally led the nation.
Yeah, but we got great matchups in playoffs coming up this week. Can't wait to see them all. Can't wait to get to Friday night. But tune in tomorrow for PPR podcast number 135, where Paul and Bert will sit down with the man who leads the section in rushing. Over 2,000 rushing yards, 27 touchdowns. Hoover's Sir Autry will join the podcast. But for me and Mike, that'll do for us, and we'll see you on the PPR.